I still remember the sound of that machine. The cold gel on my stomach, the silence in the room as the doctor moved the probe across my skin. My husband Joe was seated in the corner, his legs crossed, his eyes glued nervously to the little screen. I thought it was the happiest moment of our young lives. I thought we were there to hear good news about the child we had been praying for. But then the doctor stopped. His hand froze and his face changed. He swallowed hard before saying the words that would shatter everything. He told Joe, not me, that my body was broken, that my womb could not carry life. Then, as if he was whispering a cruel command, he leaned close to my husband and said, "You should leave her, divorce her, start over with someone who can give you a family." I turned to Joe for comfort, but instead I saw a man whose spirit had already left me. That night, Joe did not come home. And little did I know, that moment would not only destroy my marriage, it would awaken something inside me, something that would eventually seek revenge. Before I continue, let me pause to say something important. To all my subscribers, I want to thank you deeply. Your support is the fire that keeps me going. And for those who are new or returning viewers who have not yet subscribed, I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button. Your likes, comments, and shares are what fuel this channel and keep stories like mine alive. So please engage, comment, and let me know your thoughts as you listen. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Cathy. I was only 22 years old when my life changed forever. Vermont was my world then. Green hills, quiet farms, small towns where everyone knew everyone. I grew up believing in simple things: love, marriage, family. When Joe came into my life, I thought he was the answer to all my prayers. He was kind, tall, hardworking, the sort of man who made promises with steady eyes that you believed. We married young, full of hope, full of plans. We both wanted children, Joe especially. He talked about building a house with a big yard, filling it with laughter, birthdays, and memories. I wanted the same. Every time he placed his hand on my stomach and whispered about our future baby, I felt my heart melt. That was why the ultrasound appointment was such a big day for us. We thought it was the beginning of everything we dreamed about. But dreams can collapse in seconds. When Dr. Williams delivered his words, I felt like the ground was pulled out from under me. My hands shook, my breath caught in my chest, and I stared at Joe, begging him with my eyes to stay, to fight for me, to love me beyond this cruel twist of fate. But the look he gave me was not of comfort. It was distance, cold, detached. On the drive home, Joe barely spoke. His knuckles tightened on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched. I wanted to reach for him, but something told me to stay still. We arrived home and I made him dinner like I always did, hoping to break the silence. He ate quickly, muttered something about needing fresh air, and left the house. That was the last night he slept under our roof. At first I told myself he just needed time. Maybe he was processing the shock. Maybe he needed space. But days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, and Joe never returned. Clothes missing from the closet, his tools gone from the shed, his smile erased from our photographs. He left me alone in that small Vermont house with nothing but silence and unanswered questions. The town noticed. Neighbors whispered when I walked by. Friends avoided my eyes. They said things behind closed doors. Things about my body, about my failure as a wife, about how Joe deserved better. Their pity was almost worse than the loneliness. I would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying the doctor's words over and over. You should leave her, divorce her, start over with someone who can give you a family. They echoed like a curse, like a sentence I could never escape. But the deepest wound was not what the doctor said. It was what Joe chose to believe. He did not fight for me. He did not love me enough to stay. That betrayal cut sharper than any knife. Still, I held on to hope. I wrote Joe letters, begging him to come back, telling him we could find another way. I prayed, I fasted, I cried, but every prayer seemed to bounce back at me, unanswered. Then, one evening, I found myself standing in front of the mirror. My eyes were red, my cheeks hollow, my spirit nearly broken. That was the night something inside me shifted. I whispered to myself, if they think I am weak, if they think I am broken, then they do not know me at all. And in that moment, I felt the first spark of something dangerous, something that would eventually seek revenge. Because if Joe thought he could leave me to be forgotten, he was wrong. If the doctor thought his words would define me, he was wrong. They would both learn, sooner or later, that Cathy was not a woman to be discarded. But at that time, I did not yet know how the truth would come out, and when it did, it would shake me more than the betrayal itself. When Joe left, the silence inside my home became unbearable. The ticking of the clock seemed louder, the creak of the wooden floor more haunting, the empty chair at the dinner table like a ghost staring at me. I was 22 years old, abandoned and stripped of the future I thought I had. Vermont's small-town charm, once warm and comforting, became a cruel reminder that everyone knew my story. In places like ours, privacy was a myth. At the grocery store, women stared at me with pity in their eyes. Men looked at me with judgment, as though I had failed in the one duty society thought a wife owed her husband. Even the church pew that once gave me comfort felt heavier. I could hear the whispers as I walked in. That is the woman who could not give her husband children. The shame burned me alive. Nights were the worst. I would wake up expecting to hear Joe's footsteps on the porch, expecting the door to open and his voice to say, "Cathy, I am sorry I am home." But the nights stretched endlessly into mornings, and all I had were crumpled letters with no replies. I felt like a widow whose husband was still alive but dead to her heart. And yet, through the silence, through the loneliness, something inside me hardened. It was a cold autumn afternoon when I first overheard the truth. I had gone to pick up some supplies from the pharmacy in town. As I stood in line, two women were talking, their voices low but sharp enough to cut. One of them said, "Do you know what Dr. Williams told Joe? He told him Cathy's womb is useless. He said if he wanted a real family, he should leave her. And Joe did exactly that. Poor man never stood a chance with her." I froze. The blood drained from my face. The words confirmed what I had suspected all along, that Joe did not just leave on his own. He had been pushed, manipulated, and worse, he believed a stranger's voice over the vows he made to me. I walked out of that pharmacy without buying a thing, my head spinning, my heart pounding like a drum. The humiliation was not just about my body, it was about betrayal. Two men had made a decision about my life as though I wasn't even human. That night, I sat on my porch and let the cold wind hit my face. My tears dried before they even rolled down. I was done crying, done begging, done waiting for a man who chose to vanish instead of fight. It was then that anger entered my veins like fire. I began to notice the patterns. Joe was not just gone. He had moved on. I heard whispers of him renting a place across town, seen in the company of another woman, a younger woman. I saw him once, from afar, at the farmer's market. He laughed, he carried her basket, and he walked like he never had a wife whose world he had shattered. My hand shook, but not from weakness. It was rage. And the rage grew into a plan. I would not throw stones at his window. I would not scream at his new woman in the streets. No, my revenge would be quieter, sharper, like a knife slid into the softest place. I would show him and everyone else in that town that Cathy was not broken, not discarded, not a woman to be pitied. So, I made choices. I went back to school. I picked up part-time work at the library, where I spent hours surrounded by books, knowledge, and silence that healed me instead of haunting me. Every dollar I earned was saved. Every night I studied, I grew stronger. Neighbors expected me to wither, but instead I bloomed in the shadows of my pain. I learned to drive, bought my own secondhand car, and started building the kind of independence Joe never thought I could have. But the deeper truth, the one about what Dr. Williams said to my husband, burned inside me like a coal. I could not let it go. I replayed it every day. He had no right to interfere in my marriage. He had no right to use his white coat as a weapon against me. And Joe had no right to believe him so easily. Every step I took, every book I read, every dollar I saved, it was all leading towards something bigger. Because revenge, I realized, is not always loud. Sometimes it is the quiet building of power until the very people who thought you were broken come face to face with your strength. Years rolled on. Seasons changed. Vermont's winters came with their brutal cold, and still I stood firm. I smiled less, but when I did, it was not out of weakness. It was out of knowledge. I was becoming someone new. And yet, life has a way of bringing the past back when you least expect it. I was 28 when it happened. I had almost buried the pain, almost learned to live without Joe when I saw him again. Not across town, not with his new woman, but standing on the very porch he had abandoned, staring at me with a face full of regret. And behind him, a shadow of truth I never expected to hear again. When I opened the door and saw Joe standing there, my breath caught in my throat. He looked older, worn down, as though life had chipped away at the confidence he once carried. His hair had thinned, his eyes carried shadows, and for the first time in years, I saw not the man who abandoned me, but a man haunted by his choices. "Cathy," he whispered, his voice cracking, "I need to talk." I should have slammed the door in his face. I should have reminded him of the night he left me to crumble alone. But instead, something inside me, a mixture of curiosity and the strength I had built in silence, made me step aside. He walked into the same living room where I had cried for him years ago. He sat in the same chair where he once planned our future, and he buried his face in his hands. "I was wrong," he muttered. "I believed something I should not have believed. I let fear control me." My heart pounded. I asked, "Fear of what, Joe? Fear of me? Fear of loving a woman whose womb you thought was broken?" His silence was enough of an answer. And then he confessed. Dr. Williams had told him in private after the ultrasound that staying with me would be like tying himself to a sinking ship. He told him I could never carry life, that my body was damaged, and that he had a duty as a man to find someone else who could give him children. Joe admitted that those words poisoned his heart, that he went home that night already convinced our marriage was dead. I listened. I did not cry. I did not beg, because I no longer needed him. Instead, I looked him straight in the eye and said, "You did not just believe him, Joe. You wanted to believe him, because a man who truly loved me would have fought for me, with me, no matter what. You chose the easier path, and that path has carved you into the man I see before me today, broken, empty, and full of regret." He flinched, as though my words were sharper than a knife. And then came the twist I had never expected. He told me that the doctor had been wrong, completely wrong. A second opinion, years later, revealed that there was nothing wrong with my womb. The first ultrasound had been inconclusive, misread, a cruel mistake that robbed me of my marriage. The truth slammed into me like a storm. I staggered backward, my knees weak. All those nights of shame, loneliness, and whispered gossip based on a lie that two men chose to chain me with. Joe reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I could not bear his touch. I asked, "You came back to tell me this?" He said, "I came back because I see now what I lost. Cathy, please, give me another chance. We can rebuild. We can still have a family." For a moment, the 22-year-old girl inside me screamed to say yes, to believe him, to cling to the dream of a yard filled with children and laughter. But the woman I had become, the woman forged through silence, study, and strength, knew better. I stood tall, my voice steady. "Joe, the family I wanted was with the man I married. That man died the night he walked on me. And as for you, I do not want a life rebuilt on pity and regret. My revenge is simple. I will live without you. I will thrive without you, and you will spend the rest of your days watching me rise from the ashes you left me in." His face crumbled. He left my house, his shoulders slumped, his steps heavy, and I let him go, this time for good. In the years that followed, my life became proof of my own strength. I finished my education, I built a career, I traveled, and I carved out a life that was mine and mine alone. I never remarried, not because I could not, but because I chose not to let anyone else define my worth again. And as for Dr. Williams, his career did not end well. Word spread of other women he misdiagnosed, other lives he had disrupted. Eventually, he lost his license. When I read about it in the paper, I did not smile, but deep inside, I felt a sense of justice. Now, at 58, I look back and realize that what was meant to break me became the very fire that shaped me. The lesson is simple. Do not let anyone, doctor, husband, or society, tell you what you are worth. Pain may break your heart, but it can also build your backbone. And to those listening now, if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Betrayal does not define you. Abandonment does not destroy you. What defines you is how you rise when the world expects you to fall. To all my subscribers, thank you for being part of this journey with me. Your support means everything. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if you were in my place? This is Cathy's story, but it might very well be yours too.